Good morning. Welcome to your early morning intuitive guidance for this fine Friday. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum, here with some wisdom to give you something to think about going into the weekend. And I'm smirking because now I have figured out Facebook's new little twist to going live, and it's now second nature, and booyah to Facebook. I got it. Good morning. Welcome to Lucy. Glad you are here. You're the first one popping on. Good morning, good morning. And I apologize for my appearance, but today is house cleaning day. My sister from Oregon is going to be coming on Monday. She hasn't been here since before the pandemic, so I need to tidy some stuff up. So it doesn't pay to be beautiful when all you're going to be doing is digging under dusty beds and whatever else. Good morning, Cindy. Welcome. Glad you're here. For those of you who... Oh, it looks like someone else has popped on also. Good morning. Oh, it's Abigail. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for the sunrise. Not here yet. Dark as heck. So we'll get there. For those of you who have the book and want to follow along, today we are doing another section of Taking the War Out of Our Words, the Art of Powerful Non-Defensive Communication by Sharon Ellison. And I really like this section we're going to do because it is a review and how do we practice this? And she has some very practical and creative ideas in terms of how we can practice, because anything worth doing is worth doing well. Good morning, Mel. Glad you're here. And this takes practice. This is not how we were trained to communicate with each other, and we need practice. And she's got some very good ideas with regard to that. So, again, those of you who have the book, dig it out. And we are going to be on page number 228. So again, this is about selecting practice methods. Good morning, Gwen. Glad you are here. Glad you're joining us. And so let me read through, it's a couple pages worth, but just jot down some ideas. If you have a paper and pen handy, jot down some ideas that, or you might want to go back and take notes after the fact. Let me grab a drink here. Just to pick a few of these. Good morning, Carolyn. Glad you're here. Welcome. So, again, we can incorporate things into our lives that are new by practicing with them. These things need practice. So, page 228, for those of you with the book, selecting practice methods. If someone says something that pushes our buttons, the reaction can set in instantaneously. In every cell of our body, people often ask me, how can I practice this? How can I be non-defensive when someone has just said something that makes me furious? I remind them that once they begin to speak non-defensively, they are likely to be encouraged by their effectiveness, which diminishes any difficulty they are having. It usually becomes easier with each application, just like anything else. You're learning to tie your shoes, you're learning to whistle, you're learning to ride a bike, you're learning to drive. To begin with, it is arduous, right? Once we have it down, we just do it. Same for this. Same for this. I also suggest that people think about the various ways they can practice. I present several techniques in the following pages, and then choose ahead of time those that are most suitable for their own learning styles. Some people are really good at memorization. I stink at memorization. Good morning, Beth. Good morning. So others of these are probably going to be more likely to be the ones that I will utilize. But for you, you may be a great memorizer, and that may be one that you pick. So, let's see, where was I? If you simply assume that you will be able to employ a non-defensive tool spontaneously in the moment of interacting, you may have a hard time escaping the pull of old habits. Yes, we fall back into what's familiar, right? Especially when we're stressed. Because remember, I gotta set this down here. Here's our brain sitting in our head. We have two hemispheres. Band of fibers in between called the corpus callosum, designed to help those hemispheres communicate with each other, right? When we are stressed and cortisol and adrenaline and all that stuff is flowing, it effectively shuts down that bridge of communication, and we become a half-wit, less full access to our whole brain with regard to whatever it is we're dealing with. So, and we tend to default in particular ways. Certain people tend to default to becoming overly logical about the whole situation. Other people tend to default to becoming overly emotional about the whole situation. Sometimes you'll hear people say things like, I was so upset I couldn't even think straight. That's when this has happened. So using these techniques, practicing these techniques begins to mitigate that and allow your brain to function as a whole again. So let's learn some of the opportunities to practice here. First one is observing through a non-defensive lens. Almost like you're putting on a new set of glasses, observing through a non-defensive lens. To practice, I often suggest people simply start by carefully watching patterns of defensiveness in themselves and in others. If you go to work, if you're part of a family, if you have a friend group, you're going to see defensiveness. It's a human characteristic. Be the curious observer. When other people are getting into it, observe that. Be the curious observer, interested bystander, witness what's going on there. Much easier to analyze it in other people than in ourselves. It's an opportunity to learn. Seeing patterns clearly can diffuse the power they have over us. Perhaps we are angry at a woman friend who continually breaks commitments. After observation, during which it becomes clear that she is surrendering and sabotaging, we may see her vulnerability as well as her covert hostility. We may feel genuinely curious about why she first surrenders and then hurts us by breaking commitments. The separateness or detachment that comes with acting as an observer can give us enough room to shift gears and respond differently. We can also be that observer, and she's going to talk about this too, be that curious observer after the fact. So if we have a situation that lights us up like a Christmas tree, and we don't take the step back and we engage in whatever, after the fact, we can kind of watch the newsreel in our head and observe it and make some decision. Okay, there's where I went off the rails. If I had said X or done Y, it might have gone differently. So we're watching our training films, as it were. Okay? So the first one is observing through a non-defensive lens. Next one, mentally replaying a non-defensive interaction. After an interaction that has left us frustrated, we often replay it in our minds so that we come out on top. I should have said, or could you believe, all that stuff we do in our head, right? We attempt mentally to re-script the battle we feel we have just lost. How much time and energy do we waste on that, right? If, instead of staying locked in the power struggle, we began to replay the scene using non-defensive questions, statements, and predictions, we will be better prepared the next time a similar situation occurs. Behavioral studies have shown that people who mentally visualize doing yoga or playing basketball can acquire a significant portion of the skill level attained by those who actually practice physically. So when we do mental rehearsal, it helps us gain the skills. Unfortunately, we've developed the pattern of doing mental rehearsal about how terrible, horrible, awful it's going to be, thus helping to create terrible, horrible, awful, right? Because we're on edge about what we think's going to happen, and if we see any inklings that lean that direction, we jump on those. We've now paid attention to what we don't want, empowering it. Okay, so basically mentally replaying it, coming up with a different way to do it. We can surely benefit by mentally practicing how to say things non-defensively before doing so in an actual situation. Also, even within the context of our own minds, a non-defensive resolution can build our self-esteem more than a defensive win. Okay? So when we're doing this the way we're learning in the book, that begins to create the new groove in our brain that becomes easier and easier to default to over time. Third one is modeling a non-defensive voice tone and body language. One of the hardest aspects of practicing non-defensive voice tone and body language is shifting away from habitual defensive patterns. In workshops, I have people practice in groups. I almost always, even after others have found a person's tone and body language to be acceptably non-defensive, find signs of defensiveness. She's trained for this. She wrote the book on this. So yes, she's going to be very good at picking up the subtleties and nuances of defensiveness. After I help a person eliminate those signs, what the person says sounds so different that the others will make audible sounds and comments such as, "Oh yeah, that's it. Now I get it. I feel much more like answering you. My walls came right down when you said it like that." So we, as the partner of the person practicing, may think they're doing good enough. But she's so good at this stuff that she can pick out those subtle nuances that might still foster a defensive reaction. Okay? Let's see. Mirrors are valuable aids in learning about body language. I remember once when I was angry with my then 3-year-old daughter. I said in an accusatory way that I didn't like the look on her face. How many of us heard that as kids? She looked surprised and said non-defensively, "But Mommy, you're looking at me like that too." How she had deduced that her look and mine were the same, I don't know. But I stopped cold, intentionally froze my expression, and proceeded straight to the bathroom mirror. There I was with tight lips, clenched jaw, squinted eyes, and intense frown. After that, I learned much more about myself by looking in the mirror when I was feeling different reactions and wanting to communicate non-defensively. Often we don't see ourselves as others do. Remember resting bitch face? A couple of years ago, that was a common phrase, resting bitch face. That was reflecting what was showing up on our faces, even when we weren't interacting with anybody, but it was still present. We're still seeing it. We didn't see it. Other people saw it. What are you so mad about? I'm not mad. And there we are, furrowed brow, blah, blah, blah. Beginning to pay attention to, okay, how am I coming across here? Something that I've used with people that has been incredibly helpful, good morning, Maureen, glad you're here, is practice putting your eyebrows up, okay? So when you're going to do your non-defensive response, make sure your eyebrows are up. I'm wondering if blah, blah, blah. With your eyebrows up, it comes across as curious, interested, whatever. Good morning, Noel. Glad you're here. So, again, just changing this to this can get you a whole different response from somebody. All right? Practice. Look in the mirror. See what you notice. I mean, if you walk around like this, and many of us are, when you get to be of a certain age, when you're seasoned, the crease is there. It's from having done this so much without even realizing that we do it, okay? We often do not see ourselves as others do. For example, many people frown intensely when they ask a question and have no idea how accusatory they look. They may think they look intently interested. Practicing in front of a mirror, looking at ourselves as if we were the other person, helps us learn how to make our questions look as well as be sincere and inviting. What are some other things that you could do? I wonder if, maybe your mouth moves differently. Maybe your shoulders drop. Maybe you lean in. The body language that expresses interest and curiosity instead of judgment and anger. Okay? We may also see more of our own charisma and warmth as we look in the mirror. You can use tape recorders. This is obviously an older book, but the memo feature on your phone to monitor your voice tone. But keep in mind that the tape recorder always mutes intensity to some degree, whether the tone is warm or harsh. So here's another little vignette, a story she's telling to make this point. Gary, a lumber mill manager, was frustrated because as soon as he was promoted to manager, his coworkers started to treat him differently. He found himself getting very defensive. So he began to keep a tape recorder in the car and used his 45-minute commute to practice what he wanted to say non-defensively. That routine helped him immeasurably. When I was first becoming a therapist 40 years ago, We had to videotape ourselves doing sessions and then watch those videotapes. And we weren't to put the camera on the client. The camera was to be on us so that we could pay attention to how were we responding and how were we saying what we said. And amazing things emerged. How often, good morning, Diane, how often unconsciously we mirror what other people do. They pick up their cup, we pick up our cup. They cross their legs, we cross our legs. We don't even realize we're doing it, but we're doing it. And that expresses empathy. Yes, you don't want to mirror exactly or whatever, because then they might think you're mocking them. But just doing some subtle little things. If they lean in, give it a few seconds and lean in. Watch what happens. People will feel much greater affinity for you because of those simple little mirroring things that you're doing with your body. We can also practice our tone of voice with someone who is supporting our non-defensive learning process. We may tell the person what we want to say to someone and ask if it sounds defensive, and if so, how. We can also ask a person we are talking to at the moment, did I sound defensive when I said that? Although some people may just want to reassure you rather than state the truth, others will often provide you with accurate information. Yeah, you sounded defensive. Okay, what about what I said sounded defensive? Well, it wasn't what you said, it was how you said it. Can you say it back to me in that way, exaggerating it a little bit so that I get it? You practiced with your brother. Fabulous. Fantastic. Awesome. Little bits of practice. We don't have to do this 24/7, 365. 5 minutes a day of practice will make a difference. Again, when I was working with parents and children, that was what the homework was. Practice these tools 5 minutes a day. So if the tool was description, they were going to be describing what their kid was doing. You're picking up the red block. You're putting it on the blue block. Just mere description, 5 minutes a day. That's all. That's not overwhelming, but it's enough to get into your psyche and start showing up. Okay? Let's see. The next one is planning how to use non-defensive tools. Many of us deal with a repeated situation, both at work and at home. That might be the situation with your brother, Gwen. You may therefore find it useful to sit down and plan some questions, statements, or predictions to use the next time a certain type of interaction occurs. You could even list the questions, statements, and predictions you would use to address a certain situation. Fabulous if you're having the conversation on the phone, because you can have your written notes there and pick something off of that and put it into the conversation. Notice how it goes differently. Planning ahead in this way is not the same as trying to control the situation or use a technique on another person. When we are planning how to be sincerely open and direct, we are preparing to act with respect and not be caught up in our own destructive habits. You may also decide to practice by simply picking a certain number of non-defensive questions, statements, or predictions to practice in a given time. I think I'll ask a minimum of one non-defensive question every day this week. There's your practice. There's your setting of intention. Some of you are going to find some of these things. You might find the asking of non-defensive questions is very easy for you. You might find using the prediction. If this happens, I will do X. Or if you do that, this will happen. You may find that one harder to do than the asking of the non-defensive questions. Whichever one, practice up the ones that are easy, get your confidence up a little bit, then start practicing the one that's difficult until it's no longer difficult, okay? Or you might also plan to use a single non-defensive question, statement, or prediction during any given interaction. You can also practice with a store clerk, a service station attendant, a telephone solicitor, or someone else with whom you do not have an ongoing relationship. We can practice this anywhere, right? So when I sense irritation in my coworkers, regardless of whether it involves me, I'm going to ask a non-defensive question. Or I'm going to make a statement. It seems to me like you're upset about this. Yes, I'm upset. Who does he think he is? Blah, blah, blah. Just asking the non-defensive questions, okay? Stopping a conversation and identifying it as defensive. Many of us believe when we're on a roll, when we've already screwed something up, too late to fix it. Never too late to fix it. So you could be in the middle of a conversation and go, wait, hold, stop. I'm getting defensive. I can feel it in myself. Let me just do a check with myself and see what I can do to shift gears here. Stop the conversation. You can also plan to practice by stopping certain conversations, but only in relationships where you feel comfortable doing so. As soon as you notice you are reacting defensively, even if you aren't sure what to do differently, you can stop and say, I think I'm reacting defensively to what you're saying. This in itself can help you shift to a non-defensive mode. Another valuable practice exercise is to decide to reapproach non-defensively a previously difficult or unresolved conversation. I've sometimes had people come back into a workshop late after a break and tell me we were just resolving something that happened a year ago. For some reason, we tend to think that once we have said something, it is over and done with, unchangeable, irreparable. I see every conversation as a piece of clay that we can work and rework, as long as both people are willing. So my lead in for that is, I was thinking about the other conversation and I was thinking about what we said yesterday and then we make our non-defensive observation, description, whatever it's going to be, okay? Go back and revisit them. There's no reason you can't do that. There's an opportunity to practice. And what's cool about that opportunity is you're the one pitching it, so you can have your non-defensive statements, your non-defensive questions, and your predictions ready. Yep. Now keep in mind, the other person doesn't have those ready because they were unaware that you were going to bring it up. Sometimes you could say, and I think this one's coming, but you could say, could we put this conversation on hold? Can we come back and revisit this tomorrow? You could offer your explanation. I'm really tired. I'm really hungry. I have to pee. I'm not in a great place to have this conversation right now. Can we reschedule it for X? I've done this with my sister, and she's done this with me, my sister who lives near here. And it works amazingly well. If we're hungry, if we're hangry, that is not a great time to have a deep conversation. Feed me, then we'll talk. Here's the next one. Choosing the right situation. Some people have successfully applied non-defensive communication immediately after learning about it and in difficult situations. For others, trying something totally new in a high-stakes situation may be hazardous. Each of us can gauge the level of risk we feel. If your job does not feel secure, it might not be advisable to practice a new way of speaking, first off, with the person who has the power to fire you. Makes sense to me. She says, when I was training some security police who often deal with gang members, I advised them against experimenting with a new way of talking in situations where they feared physical harm. Makes sense. Although they later used non-defensive methods successfully to reduce the escalation of potentially violent situations, they first tested the water during less intense interactions. We can integrate non-defensive ways of speaking best if we allow them to develop gradually and not try to force ourselves to use them in situations that feel too difficult. Some people find it easier to practice first in a personal relationship, others first in a professional relationship, wherever they feel the safest and most empowered. Good morning, Stella. Glad you are here. Evaluating the timing. Timing is everything. How many times have we heard that in our lifetime? Timing is everything, okay? As we develop greater skill in communicating non-defensively, we still need to consider when we choose to use the process. So this is where having some discernment can be really helpful. You may not want to raise an issue about something your partner says that upsets you when you are visiting family and your partner is already feeling tense. Timing's not good there. Or you may agree to hold off on a discussion about the bank account if you are both too tired. Ding, 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 ding. If you're hungry, if you're whatever it is, okay? If you're already upset, might want to postpone. You may decide not to give your college-age son feedback about time management when you are working to change your roles. You may want to decide carefully on the timing of talking to a coworker about a disagreement regarding a project you both need to work on. You can evaluate factors such as the other person's mood, your own confidence, the condition of the relationship, and the current activity or environment to determine optimal timing for practicing powerful non-defensive communication. The risk here is that you might find reasons to procrastinate about dealing with a certain issue forever, although there may be some issues you choose not to deal with at all. Sometimes it just isn't worth it. The question I was asking myself, is this a ditch I'm willing to die in? A lot of things are not. If it's not a big hairy deal, I'm probably going to let that one go. If, however, it's one of those death by 1,000 paper cuts thing, I need to address one of those paper cuts. Okay? Let's see here. There are other times when you might jump into the frying pan and deal with a hot issue at what seems like the worst possible time, and it could turn out extremely well. Timing is a complex issue. While the sincerity of being non-defensive can help you deal with many situations on the spot, thinking ahead and being sensitive is still vital. So you get all excited and revved up about your powerful non-defensive communication skills, and you're not paying attention to the fact that your spouse is exhausted from work. It may not be the best time. Make sure you take into account not only where you're at, but where the other person's at. Okay? A commitment to powerful non-defensive communication can and should go hand in hand with discernment about timing so that your potential for positive results can be maximized. So, just a quick little review here. Selecting your ways to practice. Observing through that non-defensive lens. Watch other people's defensiveness. Learn from them. See what isn't working. Think in your mind, how can I do this differently? Replay interactions through that non-defensive lens. So if you've had an interaction that didn't go particularly well because you got your undies in a knot, review it. What could I have done differently? After the fact, what could I have done differently? Be kind to yourself, though, because oftentimes these circumstances come up without us being prepared. Comes out of nowhere. Yeah, you may not handle it real great that time. But again, reviewing it, replaying it, and practicing, how could I have done this differently, can be very helpful. Modeling a non-defensive tone and body language. Watch yourself in the mirror. Deliver your comment in the mirror. How does it come across? Record it on your phone. Play it back to yourself. Nope, there's still an edge to my voice. Got to do this one again. Keep practicing until you get it where you want it to be. Plan how you're going to use non-defensive tools. Okay, this week I'm going to practice non-defensive questions. Next week I'm going to practice non-defensive statements. Following week I'm going to practice, whatever. Make some commitments to yourself on when you're going to practice this. And again, 5 minutes a day is enough. You don't have to go nuts with this thing. Sprinkle it in here and there and see what happens. Stop a conversation when you're in the middle of it and identify your own defensiveness. Hang on a second. I'm feeling really defensive in this conversation. Let me see if I can back up a little bit here, catch my breath, and try again. Say it. Say it. Choose the right situation and pay attention to timing. So those are our things for today. If you want to put in the feed what was most helpful to you or which one you want to try, I'd love to see where people are at with this thing, and I'll comment later when I go back and post all of this. But there is our section for today in Taking the War Out of Our Words, the Art of Powerful Non-Defensive Communication. Have an awesome Friday. We'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, you're capable of far more than you think you are. Bye-bye.